Hi, I'm starting with a series of videos on one of the most fundamental building blocks of JavaScript. It's functions. Now, functions are important as they help us to organize our code in reusable pieces, and this makes our code more modular, easy to understand, and maintainable. Now, functions are used in everything from a simple script to complex web applications. And understanding functions will give us a good grasp of the language, and it will also help us to unlock new opportunities in our programming journey. So let's get started. And we start by understanding how functions make our life easy. Have a look at the block of lines. And let's consider each line as a piece of code. And the lines within the blue block are repeating code. We segregate these lines and save these lines as a separate function, and give a reference of this function name wherever we need to execute these lines. Now with this change, we make the function modular and reusable by calling the function wherever needed. It makes the main program easy to understand, and if we need to make any change in the function, we do that only at one place and not at three separate places. Now we understand the structure of a function. It has a name that identifies the unit of code. Generally, it should be a meaningful name that explains the purpose of the function. Then it's the parameters or arguments. Now, each function can optionally accept additional data required to perform its tasks. Then we have the function body. It's the code block which executes when we call a function. And finally, it's the return value. Again, each function optionally can return a result of its operations. To declare a function in JavaScript, we use the keyword function, which is followed by the function name, and then followed by the parenthesis, where we can mention the optional parameters. This is followed by curly braces, where we define the function body. And in order to execute the function, we write the function name with the parenthesis and press the play button on the right corner of the screen. I must tell you that function names in JavaScript are case sensitive, and while declaring a function, we should use the camel case notation. Parameters are listed as part of function definition. They allow functions to accept input values and make them more flexible and reusable. In this example, param1 and param2 are the two parameters. And arguments are the actual values which are passed to a function when it is called. In this example, arg1 and arg2 are the two arguments. Do note both the terms are used interchangeably. When a function accepts two or more parameters, the mapping of parameters happens from left to right. So in this example, the value of arg1 is mapped with param1 and arg2 is mapped with param2. Coming back to the code, now we know that when we define a function that accepts two parameters, we must pass the required values for the function to execute it. But what if we call the function with no parameters or call the function with only one parameter when it expects two parameters? Will the function execute? Well, the answer is yes. In JavaScript, these statements will execute. Whereas in languages like Java, Python, C++, these statements will throw an error. Now, since there is no error, what happens when we execute these statements? When a function does not receive a required value, JavaScript assigns undefined, and as you can see in the output, it shows undefined wherever the argument is not passed to the function. Now what will happen if we pass more than two parameters to the function? Will this work? Well, the answer again is yes, it will work. And in languages like Java, Python or C++, this statement will throw an error. To summarize, there are two pitfalls to be aware of. First, when we call a function with fewer arguments, the missing arguments are assigned the value of undefined. And the second is when we call a function with more than the required number of arguments. In both the cases, JavaScript will not raise an error. Now we will look at the default parameters. For this, I write a function that accepts three parameters. The second parameter has a default value. We can set a default value at the time of function definition. JavaScript uses this default value when a function is called with fewer arguments. Now I call this function with 0, 1, 2 and 3 arguments, and we understand how this function uses these parameters. When we execute a function with no arguments, the first and the third parameter in this case will get value of undefined, and second parameter uses the default value. In the second instance, when we pass one argument, the first parameter gets the value, the second parameter uses the default value, and the third parameter gets a value of undefined. Now in the third instance, when we pass two arguments, the first and the second parameter get the value. Since the second parameter has a value, it will not use the default value, but the third parameter will still get a value of undefined. Remember, the assignment of values passed to a function happens from left to right. In the fourth instance, we call the function with 3 arguments. In this case, each parameter gets a value. Now we will learn about the return statement. For this, we are writing 4 functions. The first one has no return statement. The second one has one return statement. The third has a return statement with the value of 10. And the fourth function returns an array of numbers. Now we execute these 4 functions and observe the behavior. In the first instance, when a function has no return statement, the function, after completing the execution, returns undefined to the calling program. In the second instance, a function with a return statement 2 returns undefined to the calling program after execution. And in the third instance, when a return statement contains an expression or a value, now the function returns the value to the calling program after execution. In this case, it's the value 10. In the final instance, when we have to pass multiple values, we pack them in an array and return the array. We should not have multiple expressions in a return statement. If we mention multiple expressions, JavaScript will not throw an error, but it will return the last expression. With this, I wrap up the first video, and let's summarize what we have learned. Thank you for watching this video. If this video has helped you, please like it. If you think this can help any of your friends, do share it. And finally, do subscribe so that you don't miss any other videos in future. Thank you very much. Keep learning.